Yes, looks
Okay, great. Terrific. So on that note, I just want to thank you for the introduction, and I'm very excited to see the number of people who have joined us today. And what I'm going to do is somewhat of a quasi-commercial, but also really get into the nitty-gritty of mobile device management, the enigma of that terminology, some of the challenges, some of the issues, and some of the pains that we're seeing from Notify as we talk to many, many organizations across many verticals. There's a lot of common denominators, and we're going to touch on that. But first, I'll do a quick commercial on our company. Publicly traded, we've been around since '94. We really started our focus in mobility in 2001, where we came out with our Notify Link product, which is email PIM synchronization product. PIM, of course, is personal information management, so that would be your calendar, address book, notes, tasks. You may hear me refer to PIM, PIM. That's kind of where we're going. Headquartered in San Jose, we have our entire development technical support campus in Campfield, Ohio, which is near Cleveland and Youngstown. About 3,000 user companies combined using our various products. Been in the Magic Quadrant for email sync for the past 6 years, and we'll be in the Magic Quadrant for MDM this coming next year. Been a GroupWise partner for many years, and also in the Joint Marketing Alliance for Verizon for years. Those of you who may know me or may have met me in the past know that I'm very tightly wound with Verizon. I've spent a lot of time cultivating a relationship there that if any of you would like to reach out for some assistance in your world, please feel free to reach out to me at the end of this presentation. And, of course, we are fully licensed in ActiveSync, which is a major component of how we're able to do what we do. We actually pay Microsoft as a licensee, where some of our competitors kind of sneak it by. So in terms of solutions, here's what we have. We have our new MDM mobile device management solution, our ActiveSync client for BlackBerry, and our Notify Link product for email and PIM synchronization. We've been in the hosting business for 9 years, so we're good at doing that, and obviously we provide that for 2 of the products here. That would be the difference between an on-premise versus the new terminology for cloud or whatever we're calling it as on-demand. The ActiveSync client for BlackBerry is something that I will touch on a little bit later in terms of how it will relate to you or your customers in terms of the whole enigma of supporting all these devices. We bring a very interesting piece to this that no one else does that, again, can be pretty compelling in terms of what this all will look like to an organization. So let's just dive right into it. You know, the first acronym that we all may have heard or are may be aware of is something called BYOD. What is BYOD? Bring your own device. So, you know, when that iPhone originally came out, and Steve Jobs rocked the world with, look at this really cool device, it literally changed the planet. And what happened was that Apple got really smart about making that phone desirable to the end user, to a consumer, across multiple demographics, did it with all the applications on the device, the form factor. And what that's done over the course of the last 3 years has created a tsunami of actually reversing policies in organizations. It used to be that if I needed a laptop, for instance, many years ago, my organization said, this is the spec, this is the type of laptop you will get, this is what it will look like, here is exactly what you get, and as an end user, that's what I received. If you think about it, now what's happening is everybody wants their spec, their piece in terms of that laptop or whatever. Well, now it's happening with devices. And if you think about this for a minute from a user perspective, how much business do we do outside of our bricks and mortar headquarters or office, where really and truly the true endpoint communication tool is now the smartphone or the tablet or both that we're carrying? Yes, we're carrying the netbook, we're going to carry laptops, but really and truly when you net it out, what we're really doing here is we're looking to that endpoint of that smartphone that we live and die by. And what's happened now is the same thing that happened with laptops or other technology at organizations. People are saying, look, I have my iPhone, I have my Bionic, or I have my BlackBerry, or whatever that is, and are saying, I cannot do my job unless I bring that to work. Or a generation is saying, if you don't let me bring my device to work, I'm not working for you. Or the efficiency, the availability of customized proprietary applications for business that maximizes efficiency and revenue growth is all pointing to these devices that people are saying, you better put it on my device or I can't work. Or even simpler, where an organization said, we are only allowing, let me pull it out of there, we're only allowing BlackBerry because we can control it, because we can do all of this, has changed. And it's being changed by this, by people saying, look, I want an iPhone. Think about maybe your customer or your organization, and the CIO, the owner, the CEO walks into the IT department with his new iPad and says, look, I know that we have a policy that says it's only these devices. Make this work. I'm using it. How often do we hear that at Notify? I'd say about 99% of the time in corporate America. So what that's done is it's caused organizations to really step back and figure out, you know what, the easiest course of action up till now has been, let's just forget it. You will use this device, only this device, that's it. And that's because we can lock it down. We see it as a business productivity tool. It's not a toy like we see iPad or iPhone or Androids with all the apps. So we're just going to lock it down at maybe BlackBerry or maybe whatever. And what that's doing is that it's narrowing down the efficiency of organizations. It's not dealing with life balance in terms of the age of your workforce. It's creating huge problems. Or on the other side of the page, organizations are saying this is not really critical to our business of selling our widget or making this product or providing that service. Yeah, it's a tool to doing it. We don't care. Let them do whatever they want. So we hear it from all spectrums. And what does that mean? That there is this tsunami of people in every organization that you are involved with or part of saying, get me my device. Whether I get to bring mine in or you're providing it, this is what I want. That has turned America upside down in the enterprise, in education, everywhere. It's amazing to me as I circle the country and talk to many different organizations struggling with, we need to find a business case to make this an acceptable device. You know, why are we going to use it? It's not just because they want it. To, we are visionaries and have this great idea, and we're going to go ahead and do this. I see it across the board. And as I said, I also see it from the perspective of, you know what, we don't care. It's not important to us. Let them have what they want and whatever. You know, we've got data synchronizer. We can do a couple things there and let them connect. And you know what, it's only email. Who cares? The harsh reality of that is that everything we always feared about our network in terms of spam and antivirus and misuse of network resources or endpoints being PCs and laptops in our organization, all the concerns that we had from security perspectives and hacking or whatever we're going to call that have migrated beyond that because we did a great job at securing that, but have migrated to these devices. So organizations, many of them are saying, you know what, we don't have the time or energy or budget to deal with this, we'll just let it go, is opening up that door to significant vulnerabilities. So when we look at that workforce on this slide and think about it, and think about all the people in organizations who have been clamoring and pushing and complaining and leaving the company or whatever that's looked like, it's a real problem. It is the true situation in America across all the verticals that we talk to at Notify. So, you know, the biggest fear is, well, if we let them have it, what is that system going to look like in our environment? We don't have money. We don't have time. We don't have bandwidth. We've never budgeted for this. We have a certain spend for mobility, maybe, where we're either providing devices or allocating a stipend to give to people to go buy their devices, or we're simply saying, go get your devices. We've allocated that kind of effort, but now you're asking me to watch all this stuff, to control it all? How many people am I going to need? What's that cost going to look like? What's that overhead going to look like? What is it going to mean from a vulnerability side if we haven't filled one little hole in this whole enigma of what can they do to us with these devices problem, and how am I possibly wrapping my arms around this? It's highly complex. Think about it. How many devices are coming out a week? How many new devices do you hear about a month from Verizon or from AT&T or from BlackBerry or from any of them? You're hearing it. And so organizations look at that. CIOs, CEOs, CFOs look at this from, man, we can go and articulate what we think we need. We can go build the system we think we need, but this thing is not static. Everything's changing by the minute. How do we possibly evolve the system and evolve our company in a fashion that we're not being attacked, we're not vulnerable, that we're making everybody happy, and at the end of this, people are more efficient, they're growing more revenue for us, and they're staying with us. Pretty big problems from a 5,000-foot view. So, you know, what that tells me and tells us at Notify is we have to come up with a plan. We have to come up with a strategy, a framework for every organization we speak to long before they ever look at our software. That's where all of you are probably sitting right now. What do we do? What are other organizations doing? What are the vulnerabilities? And how do we possibly move forward in a fashion that we're no longer vulnerable? So let me give you a couple of examples, okay? The fourth largest school district in the state of Ohio is called ECOT, the Electronic Classroom of Tomorrow. There are no bricks and mortar to this school district. If you're a student who can't function in a classroom, comes from a underprivileged family, has whatever issues, you could actually, if you wanted to, as a student, enroll in this school district, be recognized in the same fashion as the school district you may be living in, and now work and learn virtually. And in that school district, every student has received either a PC or a laptop. The organization has paid for the units as well as their internet connection. Sometimes it's dial-up, if even that works. And these students are out there numbering 11,000 students in this state. And what this organization realized was that it would be really, really effective to get rid of all that stuff, all the PCs, all the internet connections, and actually go to devices. So what they did is, and this is not a commercial for Motorola, but they're going to go to a Razer Android, which sits in a little dock that gives them a keyboard and a monitor. And this is how students will connect and how they will connect to the students. Great vision, but man, what a set of problems. How do we know the student is using the device properly? How are we controlling it? How are we locking it down? If a student goes missing, how do we locate that device? All of this, just probably a shopping list of 400 things that were issues. And so what happens is your organizations have a vision, Notify, or the risk management people, or you as experts in these areas or companies like Notify can come in and actually sit down with these organizations and frame the picture. What is our acceptable usage policy? Are we allowing camera? What about Wi-Fi? Do we allow that? If we allow it, do we limit it to specific networks or hotspots that can be connected to, because we know that potentially a device could be hacked in Starbucks or whatever? We will come in, or that company has to sit and make that framework. They have to create the policies, the controls, identify that, and then get granular down to, okay, here's what we're hoping to accomplish. Here's how we're locking down the vulnerabilities. Maybe it's we're not letting them use iTunes, or we're going to control that, or whatever that is. And then they have to assess, once we have all this, and we've defined all that, how do we put teeth into it? How do we enforce it? How do we control it? How do we manage it? And that's where Notify MDM, or any mobile device management solution, now comes into the fray. So let me talk about this a little bit in terms of what mobile device management, or what we call pure play, is. So pure play mobile device management, by our definition, is the oversight, management, control, and security for mobile devices. When we think about the synchronization of email, address book, calendar, notes, tasks, from device to messaging infrastructure to the group-wise environment, that's old news. Yes, that has to happen. With our product, of course, it will happen. Whether it's group-wise, Exchange, Zimbra, Notes, Beehive, name it, we can make that happen. But the reality is that's not mobile device management. Mobile device management, one small facet of mobile device management, is how do we control that, how do we secure it, and how do we deal with that for misuse or other issues. What mobile device management is about is what you see on the top, which is how do we control these things and set policies and know what's going on in real time on these devices. So here's how we do it. You have the ultimate MDM solution, excuse me, is the BlackBerry Enterprise Server. That is the ultimate, sets the bar, defines what mobile device management is, period. And what RIM did is very simple. They figured out and created technology that would, in a proprietary way, allow them to talk to devices and devices talk to them. It's embedded in their operating system. It's developed through their network to their BlackBerry Enterprise Server. And of course, one component of that for BlackBerry is synchronizing email, calendar, and address book. All of that is a component. But again, we know with the BES that they can push down 417 policies to control that device. That the MDS logging on a BlackBerry Enterprise Server is significant in terms of what kind of information can we glean from the device to know what's going on with that device, from where are they surfing to what do their text messages look like. So the rest of us said we're not going to take our time to figure out how to do that, to build that technology. So very simply, we utilize ActiveSync that's contained in the various device systems. And that ActiveSync lives in iOS, in Android, in Windows, WebOS, Symbian, name it. It's all in there. Microsoft did us all a big favor in terms of creating ActiveSync, which effectively is the technology that we will use, or pretty much every mobile device management vendor on the planet will use to connect and talk to devices. The second thing that we rely on in terms of how do we do what we do with these things is getting the APIs from the manufacturers. What does Apple give? What does HTC, Motorola, Samsung? What do they give us in APIs to give us more hooks and more things that we can do with the device? Then finally we have, one more piece is that we have our actual thin client that is downloaded on the device. And then we have third-party applications like Touchdown, which is a container for email, calendar, address, and etc. on an Android, or our Notify Sync product, which goes onto a BlackBerry. So if you think about it, from a technology perspective, we rely on these things, but here's the biggest problem. BlackBerry is one device, one operating system, proprietary technology to control and talk to devices, where we're relying on ActiveSync, which by operating system will be different. What can be accomplished in the ActiveSync protocol on iOS will vary in many ways from Android, or from WebOS, or from Windows Mobile, Windows 7. Will vary. So it's kind of like Swiss cheese, and we plug in the holes for all these pieces. And so the net of that is what we can do on iOS may be the same in many ways as what we can do on Android, but there will be variances. There will be discrepancies. I'm going to point some of those out. And the biggest problem is when you talk to vendors, some of us love to just tell you straight on, we can't do this, and this is why, versus many vendors will say, well, we can do it, but they don't give you the fine print of, well, it's only on this device or with this firmware version or this third-party application on it. If you look at this also from leveling out the playing field for MDM vendors, what you'll see here is, really, we're pretty much in the same place in terms of technology. The variations on the theme in terms of the technology side of what differentiates MDM players like us is who's ahead or behind on the ActiveSync piece, who's ahead on the API sets from the various manufacturers, what have they chosen to do with their application on the device, and where do they sit with an app like Touchdown, which is sold by NitroDust and we all resell. What kind of hooks have we been able to get, and what access have we gotten, and how have we developed that in our product? There will not be a lot of differences. What there will be is a lot of spin, where vendors will talk about a feature 27 different ways to make you think it is earth-shatteringly new, when in fact it is what it is. And that's how Notify works. So if you look at that from an overview, you can see that this is very straightforward stuff. This is where I want to talk about our Notify Sync. This is a little bit of a commercial, but again, this I think will help you gain some understanding into where you can help your organization or your customer. We have an app that will go on a BlackBerry called Notify Sync, which effectively turns that into an ActiveSync device. We've sold it for years. We have, I think it's 1,800 companies using it, including Oracle, because they can't connect BlackBerry to Beehive. There's no BEZ. So we've been doing it for years. And what it does is it installs on the device. It utilizes the native address book and calendar, notes, and tasks, then creates a new icon for email, which a user opens up and looks and feels exactly the same, with a few more little notifications that they haven't seen before in the top. Now that device will connect via ActiveSync. And in the past, this was a way to synchronize your email and calendar if you really didn't need a BEZ. Now, here's the cool part. If you put Notify MDM server in the middle, now what you're going to be able to do is connect BlackBerry alongside all your other devices in one dashboard on one system. Now, if your organization or your customer's organization is underutilizing the BEZ, effectively what this means is that they can take all the functionality they're currently using on BEZ, lose the BEZ, actually push this application out from the BEZ to the devices, and then decommission it and now manage everything through the Notify MDM server. We're the only solution that there is that will allow this. Now, the caveat to all of this is we're not a BEZ replacement. We do a number of policies, a number of controls, but if that organization or your customer's organization are utilizing a big portion of what's available, then of course they will need to keep the BlackBerry enterprise server, manage their BlackBerry separately, and have two systems. Our experience at Notify, especially in the GroupWise community is that many organizations are totally underutilizing the BES and would love to manage everything from one system, and this is going to allow you to do it. So let's take a look at what the components of an MDM solution are, okay? And it breaks out this way. You've got, number one, centralizing the management, control, oversight, watching statistics, auditing, everything from one console. In our case, it's one server. That server is multi-tenant. If your customer or your organization has multiple locations around the country or whatever and needs to set up on one server separate organizations within your company and have separate logins and controls for them, can all be done on one server with our software. I'm working with a very large law firm with offices all over the world, and the key reason that they're going with us is the fact that they're not setting up separate servers for each of those operations. They're managing it all from one place around the world, actually. So having that in one place is what MDM starts to be. Now we have to add in, well, what kind of security policies, what kind of controls are we imposing on devices, and let's get granular on that, okay? Mitch and Bill are determined to be in the same group requiring the same types of controls on their device, but Mitch happens to have a personal device because we're allowing that. Bill has a corporately issued device. What we're going to need to be able to do here is actually open up and within that policy define, if you have a corporate device, here's the stuff we're going to do. If you have a personal device, here's the stuff we're going to do. Very straightforward. That's what an MDM solution needs to do for you. It also needs to give you the ability to know what's going on that device. What is its behavior? What is the user doing? What applications are on that device? What firmware? Where is it? All that stuff. You're going to need to know that because the circumstances will arise where we have to go and investigate. Mitch is a rogue employee. We have our concerns. Let's take a look. A, is he using an approved device? No. Look, we can see here he's using a Bionic. We didn't approve that device. You know, we need to have that kind of oversight to do that, and an MDM solution needs to do that. From an application side, how do we manage applications? How do we control iTunes, the Android market? How does that happen? Well, here's the bad news. Android market, in terms of mobile device management vendors, is the Wild West. We can't do anything. iTunes, YouTube, we can turn those off. You can with an iOS device, your organization can actually build your own app store and just limit applications to the app store for your users. And if you're in education, you can do a volume purchase and get discounted prices if you're going to allow people to have apps. Enterprise also has a volume purchase program with those guys. But the reality is you're not going to be able to effectively manage many apps other than you can do a black and white list with a Windows mobile device. Now, my competitors would never speak to you that way. They'll give you some broad statement, but that's the reality of what does application management look like. This will change. We're bound by the technology. So the next piece is the asset tracking and location. Where is the device? Mitch just informed us that a week ago he lost his device. He didn't have the nerve to tell us. We need to track where that thing's been. So having the ability to go in and do that kind of thing and know the location. Here's the other one, text messaging. Many of the organizations here have either deployed, implemented, or are considering an archiving solution for email. Many of you are doing that for storage purposes, but many of you are doing it over liability, litigation data holds, other HR issues or legal issues that compelled you to say, we need the email. Well, now with our solution, you're actually going to be able to capture text messages in a fashion from BlackBerry and Android devices, push that into an SQL database in your environment, or ours, depending on where you place this server, and actually conduct discovery on that content. If your organization falls under HIPAA or Sarbanes-Oxley or FINRA or SEC, any of those legislations, you are pretty much mandated that if you're allowing them to text, you better have a copy of it. If you get sued, if you're worried about that stuff, wouldn't it be nice to know that you have that content available for discovery in the event that you have to deal with that from a legal perspective? We think we're archiving Mitch's email. We think he may be texting out information, our customer list, or other information that will hurt us. We think he's leaving. He's got an agenda. We better take a look at what he's texting. We better take a look at where he's been for the last 2 weeks. Well, that's the kind of stuff you're going to be able to do with us and that you need to be able to do with a mobile device management solution. You're going to want to know if someone has jailbroken a device, if someone has rooted an Android, if someone has downloaded an application that you said you cannot download, if someone is using a device that you have not approved and is connected to the Notify MDM server and is synchronizing. You're going to want to know those things and be alerted about it. If you wanted to, you could actually provide a portal to each user where they could do their own search, locate, lock, change password, that kind of thing. And the final component of this is, do you want to install this Notify MDM server in-house, or would you like it hosted for you? So again, if we think of the BlackBerry analogy, devices will connect to the Notify MDM server, only the Notify MDM server, which in turn will make the connection to your group-wise infrastructure to synchronize email and all that stuff, but at the same time push back the policies and controls to the devices and audit and log all the activities. That server is either sitting in your network, in your DMZ, or it's sitting in our hosted environment. Devices connect, and we make the connection from the Notify MDM server into your DMZ to go make the connections. A lot of cloud here, a lot of stuff to grasp and understand or absorb here. But when you look at here, if you look at what that means, at what an MDM solution should do, and what I've highlighted, just some of the stuff that our Notify solution does, you can see all of a sudden we're getting a very granular control of our devices. Now, from a deployment perspective, it's very simple. And what I'm going to do is, as I'm talking to you, I'm going to just browse to our portal. Just give me 1 sec here. And we'll take a quick look at the dashboard for our product, where I can talk a little bit about deploying and then talk to you about what those policies, what those controls look like. And we'll do this in the next 10 minutes, and I will be done. So what I'm doing right now is logging into our server for Notify, which contains all the people in our company. I'm logging in. This server itself has about, I think, 50 different customers or instances running on it virtually. I can only log into our server. So what we're seeing here, number one, is all the different groups in our organization that we've defined as having to have their own set of policies and controls, and we can break that out. Here we can see what kind of devices do we have in our organization, what does our carrier mix look like, and what does our personal versus corporately issued device mix look like. Well, we're going to want to know that if we're going to allow personal devices to connect. And think about this in your organization. I guarantee you, if I asked you to raise your hands, almost everybody would. You have personal devices connecting to your messaging infrastructure, and you have no clue what they're doing. None. When I ask that question in a room, every hand goes up. And I'm telling you, you're going to need to know it, and you're going to need to control it. So let's take a look at that from a policy side. What would we do? We'd simply come in here, create a policy. We'll look at the policy that I happen to fall into here. For starters, you'll notice here it's corporate versus individual I'm in this policy group. We've set controls for both corporate and individually owned devices. We're going to archive files on devices, meaning that we want to be able to visually look at what the file tree looks like on the device. In the case of Android and BlackBerry, we are going to record my phone usage data and my text message data if I'm using an Android, and we're going to do that both for corporate and personal. Here's where we're going to get into the granular of, do we allow Bluetooth, browser, camera, the SD on an Android? Are we disallowing any of this? Are we allowing Wi-Fi? We can get as granular as saying, yes, we're going to allow Wi-Fi, but only in these networks that we've defined. From an iOS side, we can get very specific on a whole bunch of stuff, from the application of controlling iTunes, App Store, all of that, to what we can do with Safari, to controlling where they can go based on ratings, to other security stuff in terms of their profile removals. If they're using the Touchdown client, which is a container for email on the Android, we get into about 70 things here, including controlling signature, to what fields will be in their phone book, to can they cut and paste in email, to what other functionality will we suppress on the device. All of this can be done quickly, create the policy, and we now have defined, here's what happens for people who fall into this policy suite. The next thing that we can do is we can come back to the user, and now that we've set the policies, from a deployment perspective, I'll show you how quick and easy this is going to be. We can either do an LDAP and literally bring everybody in and have their username, first name, last name brought in and living on the server. And then when that user connects to downloads our app and tries to make the first connection from their device, it will connect. The server will identify those credentials and immediately apply the policy that we've assigned to that user through our LDAP lookup. So when I enroll my device and download the Notify MDM app, register it, I will be asked, is this a corporate or a personal device? I will connect. We will have populated the server in advance with the actual policy group that I will fall into, and the minute I connect, all the policies are pushed to that device. So you have 100 users. You could LDAP them in. You could manually key them in one at a time if you wanted to. You could do a CSV batch file. Take a template, just populate it and import it. Any of these ways you can do this, or you could simply let people connect and then do this after once they connect. All of that's possible. Let's just quickly look at me and what we can do if there's a problem with Mitch Lauer. Okay, so immediately if we look, we can see what kind of device I have. We can see where my most recent location is. You can send me a quick message. We can disable my device, selectively wipe only the stuff of the business end of my device, do a full factory reset of my device, wipe my SD card, lock it, and just simply clear me completely off the system so I can no longer synchronize. If we need to know something granular about me, we can take a look at the last time I synchronized and see things like where's my battery, am I encrypted, all that stuff, to, well, where is Mitch? Pull it up on a map, and we can see exactly where he's located, or historically where he's been over the past month. Because we're going to audit or archive my phone usage and my text message usage, we'll also now be able to take a really hard look at, well, how's Mitch using his phone on a specific day, take a look at the volume of calls or text messages I'm getting, and then if we need to, here's where we're going to conduct that forensics of, well, let's take a look at his phone usage. We may even want to look for specific phone numbers, or on a text message, look at a text range, date range, take a look at it, see what kind of messages Mitch has had in text, pull those up, and we're going to see the actual content of the text message in here. We'll be able to export this data out in an XLS format and have it for reporting purposes. If we needed to do keyword searches for that, as I described before, we'll be able to do it. So on that note, what I've done is given you a very, very quick look at, from an overview of where do we start with this, why do we have to do this, how do we frame this, how do we wrap our arms around this, and how will that happen, to how do we deploy a solution quickly that's easily managed and easily augmented as people arrive and connect devices. What you're seeing is that it's very straightforward. It's very easy to manage. Once you've set this up, you're running from one server or we're hosting it for you, and now you've accomplished what we started this presentation with, the conundrum of all these multiple platforms, all these devices out there, and our users wanting to either get the company to purchase them or bring their own devices in. How do we manage it? How do we support it? Why do we have to do this? And effectively, how simple and easy will this all be for us? Hopefully I've demonstrated that for you today. If you would like more information, if you'd like to reach out to me, by all means, here's my information. Some of you may know us or may know me. By all means, please reach out. We'd love to talk to you. If this is your organization and you're scrambling and trying to sort out the issues, we'll help you long before you ever have to touch our software. If you're a reseller or a managed service provider, we'll share with you how we're working with partners around the country, bringing this value prop and value add for your business to your customers and new customers. And on that note, I'll say thank you very much, and Q, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Mitch. Let's see. We have a few questions here. If you have a couple of minutes, we can
Sure.
answer those. One came through. It says, are you saying you can capture text from iOS devices?
The only devices that we can capture text messaging for, and you saw what we're doing and how we're doing it, will be an Android device or BlackBerry. Apple has not given us any hooks or any ability to do that, nor do we foresee that happening at any time in the future.
Okay, great. Let's see. The next question is just asking if Notify will be at GuavaCon in January.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes, and we'd love to see you. And by the way, if you went to GuavaCon or have been to GuavaCon, then you've met me because I used to work for Guava. I just started with Notify in January.
Perfect. Let's see. If there's not any other questions,